Okay, Christine, let me chat with them. Okay, Christine, I can't hear you. Can you hear me? Ah, I see Rosinger's on. Fabulous. Okay. Now, it's not. Here, would you just type a little message and say that you can hear Rita? Okay. People, we have quite a few that have joined us, and I apologize. This is Rita Jones, and I apologize. We're having some technical difficulties today. Christine's friend, who's the one that really does all the back end here, is having some difficulties getting in and keep waiting for her. She's considered the organizer. So I don't know if those of you out there in the field are listening that same message that says waiting for the organizer, but if you happen to be in the webinar, I'm going to see if Rosinger can hear me. Can you, Rosinger? Because Christine can't.
Can you hear me, Rita?
Oh, fabulous, yes. Christine says she can hear me. I've been for several years now and I've never had a problem before, so I particularly want to apologize to Rosinger because it's tough when you're at your webinar with us and we're having so many difficulties. But let's go ahead and get started. Christine, can you hear me? If you just go ahead, you can, because her cursor moving. Okay, I'm going to go ahead, Rosinger, and introduce you, and then we'll have Christine bring up your PowerPoint. There we go. I'll say this part just because I know. So let me give you a quick. She believes the best part of her work is preparing students to feel confident about their education and their career options. During her graduate studies, she conducted research at Oxford University in career education curriculum, worked with the Change Leadership Foundation in Ireland, and coached a transformational youth leadership program in the San Francisco Bay Area. She has a combination of academic preparation with experiential learning, and she feels that's the key to promoting student self-awareness and preparation for this, with emphasis in curriculum design from Dominican University of California. Rosinger also her program, The Newer. So I'm looking forward to her sharing the foundational you, Rosinger, and I think you'll just have to, I don't know if we'll get to your desktop. If not, Christine will forward the PowerPoint from hers.
Okay, fantastic. It should be transferring over, and thank you to everyone who's participating today. If you are having any troubles hearing me, please go ahead and type a message into the chat window. I'll be monitoring that. At this point, I don't see that it is transferred over to my screen, though.
That's not your screen, Rosinger, that's showing.
Do you have, are you seeing my PowerPoint?
Just came up, yes.
Perfect. Okay. I included some questions, but since we had started late, we might just do those audios. So if everyone's comfortable right now having their audio on mute, and then when I can open it up for questions, and please feel free either to type them or to go ahead and ask them. So again, thanks very much for participating today. Rajinder Gill is part of the New World of Work at Feather River College, and the focus is to promote 21st century employability skills. So as Rita mentioned, we're funded through the Chancellor's office through the Doing What Matters initiative. And we have really worked to promote workforce development, both educators and organizations across the country, to develop the employability skills curriculum. And some of our key partners, in addition to the Chancellor's Office, include the Foundation for California Community Colleges, the National Association for Community College Entrepreneurship, the Mozilla Foundation, MDRC, which is a national research group, CalHR, and then Jobs for the Future. So that were happening that as educators we needed to be aware of so that we could help prepare our students for the work that they were going to be going into and for this very changeable world of work. From 2013 to 2014, we actually created curriculum and piloted it at Feather River College. In 2015, we were able to expand that pilot, and into 2016, we are developing digital badging and assessment. So I'll kind of break this down for you. I wanted you just to see the overview of what we've been doing over the last few years. So as I mentioned, in 2012 we started at Feather River College, and our focus was through the CTE and EWD programs, but to make all of the work that we were doing where it could be accessible across the campus, across disciplines, was really a key goal that we had. And we started with really extensive research. We also became futurist because we realized that being able to look ahead was incredibly important in being able to prepare our students. And one of the key components here is really looking at the emerging knowledge economy, or what is now being dubbed the human economy. And this gets down to the skills that can't be automated, with a growing focus actually on freelance and contract work. And some of you may be familiar, the Department of Labor has been putting out a lot of information about this. There was also a fantastic Forbes article that outlined that we, by the year 2020, will most likely have about 40 to 50% of our workforce doing some type of freelance work. They may not be complete entrepreneurs all the time, but they might be doing some contract work in addition to regular secured paid employment. So we really are looking at a very different workforce than the one that happened even 20, 30 years ago. So one of the big things that we wanted to do is to combine all of this research we were doing with real input. And we actually gathered employers, recruiters, HR representatives, as well as educators and students. And what we were looking at is, what are the skills that you think are required for this new knowledge economy? And we actually thought that we were going to get a lot of feedback on very specific skills, coding skills or skills specific to an industry. And again, the feedback was what we used to call the soft skills. Now we're calling the employability skills, that those were the key components that employers were looking for. They wanted to see students or re-entry workers coming back into the workforce with those skills in place. And from that, we were able to condense all the crossover in that feedback to our top 10 list of 21st century essential skills, which are adaptability, analysis and solution mindset, collaboration, communication, digital fluency, entrepreneurial mindset, empathy, resilience, self-awareness, and social and diversity awareness. And these skills, they're very broad topics when you look at them. So one of the other key components of the work that we did in partnership with the Mozilla Foundation, they had gathered national research on college and career competencies from organizations and from education programs across the country. and we cross-referenced those, and we were able to come up with a list of primary attributes. And this is 4 core components under each of these skills that really help define what that skill means in the modern workforce. We'll actually be hosting that document open source soon on our website, but if anyone's interested after the webinar, I'm happy to follow up with emails and can send that out to you as well. It's a really great way to start the conversation around how do you look at this broad skill and break it down into quantifiable units of what a student can actually learn if they're adaptable in the workplace or if they have empathy. And just as a quick aside, we know that there are a lot of terms that are being used to kind of cover this umbrella of 21st century skills. You might have heard cross-disciplinary skills, transferable skills, non-cognitive skills, and again, like I said, soft skills usually was the term that was used. And really what it comes down to is it's work habits, knowledge, character traits, the interpersonal and intrapersonal skills that individuals really need to be competitive and successful in a very changeable workplace. And the lucky thing is that just like any other subject, these skills can be taught. And that was a really fundamental thing that we realized, is that oftentimes students were going out into the workforce or even re-entering the workforce, and they were being judged against a set of parameters that they didn't even know. So they were being judged when they didn't know how to send out a proper email, and yet they'd never been given formal instruction on how to do that. And so that became the real goal that we had in developing our modules. So we were lucky enough to have braided funding from a couple of different sources through the state of California and through the Chancellor's office, including adult education, CTE, EWD funding, and from that we were able to develop 20 lessons. So we have 2 lessons per skill, and these lessons were designed so that they can really be implemented within a 45 to 60-minute time frame. That means that they can be implemented in a classroom setting, as well as they can be expanded and turned into standalone workshops. And it includes kind of the entire package of what you would need. So it has lessons plans for instructors, presentations, the video series, which you'll also see is hosted off of our website, and we have a series of videos that are kind of funny what not to do videos. If anyone's familiar with Funny or Die videos on YouTube, they're very similar to that concept of creating a hyper reality to be able to show things that you would not want to do in the workplace. And then we have longer video assessments which show open-ended responses, and it can really help generate conversation amongst the trainer or the instructor and the students or the clients, so that you can discuss what is the most professional approach in this scenario. So we wanted to make sure we were really going through the process of not only combining research but vetting this with students and then creating improvements as we go. And so we did pilot it at Feather River College, which is a very small rural college with over 200 students. And then we were able to create our website. You'll see the web address here is just newworldofwork.org. And we were able to house all of our curriculum open source. And one thing I really want to emphasize here is that we had the goal that this was created with public funds, and we wanted it to go out to the public again for free. We wanted to make sure that there wasn't an access barrier to being able to use this curriculum. You can sign up and start using it tomorrow. So luckily we were able to get industry-driven regional collaborative funding, and that allowed us to expand our pilot to partner colleges across California. Interestingly, because we are able to have access where we download the curriculum, and we've seen that we now have organizations across the country that are signing up and that are starting to use the curriculum. So we even have a few international schools that have been using the curriculum, which is really exciting. So one of the big things that I wanted to address is kind of the why and the how. And why do we need to teach these 21st century skills? And this was a great conversation that I actually had with Rita and Susan before the webinar, of really condensing the concepts of why are you teaching these. Well, one is that you are in a facilitator mode with your students, whether you work for a workforce development board, if you are an instructor at a community college, We've even had instructors at the high school level who are using modified versions of the curriculum. And it's that you can act as a bridge. You can act as a bridge between what the students are doing currently, or what your clients are doing currently, and where they want to go, what their aspirations are. And so you really are helping them enter into this new world of work, and you're guiding them in their understanding of what are their core transferable skills. If they're potentially going to have over 30 jobs, which is the projection for millennials, that they may have up to 30 different jobs within the arc of their career, you're really helping them understand that it's not so much the work they're going into, but the skills that they can bring to it, and that's how they're going to be able to be viable workers. You're also able to align the skills education here with the potential of having workplace learning, and we really emphasize that as a win-win, that if your students are able to combine the skills education and then do some form of an internship, job shadow, or actual placement in an employer's setting, that's going to really help them because they can have that living laboratory of practicing the skills. So I was going to run a poll, but I think that since Christine isn't able to access it, I'll just ask you to type in to the chat window the question of, are you actually using some form of 21st century skills education currently in your classroom or organization? And when you type into the chat window, you can send it where it's to the organizers and the panelists. So I'll be able to see it, and I'll take a look at some of the answers. But what we were seeing as we were partnering is that many organizations are using some form of skills education, and to really emphasize the fact that our lessons have been designed, one, to be open source, and two, to really be able to integrate into activities that you're already doing. So if you already, maybe you're using ACT work keys, or maybe you've designed an internal program that goes along with your industry, and that this can really just add to it. And so there's a very collaborative sense around the work that we're doing. And I wanted to kind of show an example of how that's working right now in California. So we do have a current curriculum pilot through the IDRC grant, as I mentioned. And right now we're being piloted at Columbia College, Feather River, Folsom Lake, Hartnell, Lassen, Santa Barbara, Santa Rosa, Shasta, the Southern California Biotechnology Center at Miramar and West Hills, and we've just had Skyline College, American River College, and Pasadena are adding in as well into our current grant cycle. So you'll see we really kind of cover all the regions that have been designated through the Chancellor's office. And what's very interesting, and what I want to emphasize to everyone here who's listening who might be thinking, wow, I'd like to maybe try these lessons out, is that they can be integrated into existing coursework. You could design a course, or you could design a series of workshops where they're standalone and you're focusing on each of the skills individually. But many of our campuses have courses in place that they knew that this would be an enhancement, that this would go along with the work that they were doing. And as you can see from the list here, there's quite a range. And it's not just necessarily CTE specific courses either. We have it integrating into sociology courses. And then we do have some of the more traditional CTE courses, as well as integration into work experience courses. And interestingly, all of these courses have turned out to be 4-credit courses. So there's 2 levels at which a student can benefit. One, right now, they're actually earning academic credit to learn something in their discipline, as well as have the enhancement of the skills education. And then they're also being given that guidance through their instructors that these skills are ones that they're going to be parlaying into their future career success. So as we get into 2016, we have a couple of enhancements that we're working on, and this really comes into the partnerships that we're doing. So with the Foundation for California Community Colleges, we're actually developing 10 digital badges, one for each of the skills. The badges are going to be hosted through the Foundation's LaunchPath program, and the website is there, launchpath.com. And what we're looking at is that the badges act as micro-credentials. So what you have is students are going through the skills curriculum, and as a culminating piece of that, the instructors can be able to assist them in setting up profiles on LaunchPath, and then the students can try and assess for these digital badges. I'm not sure how familiar everyone is with digital badging, but it's an online platform. It's an assessment. It's a series of questions. It also includes some of our video content. And with that, once they earn the badge, they're able to send it out open source because it's through the Mozilla Open Badging platform. And they can put it on their LinkedIn profiles. They can put it on their own hosted websites. They can have employers look at it and really show verification that, yes, I do have social diversity awareness in a workplace setting. A couple of other things that we're doing right now is that we're partnering with the MDRC research group, and they're doing an external review of our data collection and assessment templates. And that's another element that we've built into this program, is not only do we have the curriculum, but we also have ways in which you can have formalized structure around tracking your students that are going through this, or your clients, and also having them do self-assessments on their awareness of the skills as they progress through the term or as they have completed a workshop. And one of the other programs that we have that we're looking at on a statewide level is that the governor's office a couple of years ago started the Civil Service Improvement Act, and that is to look at existing state workers and those coming into state employment. We're facing a retirement rate at the state level of almost 40% within the next 3 years. So there are a lot of state jobs that will be coming open, and the community college system is one very fantastic pipeline into those positions. And so part of CalHR's project with the CSI initiative was to look at how do you incorporate as part of your vetting process the idea around core skills or competencies. And so New World of Work was one of the models that was reviewed, and it was seen to be a model of reference for the state being able to create a similar program internally that will be able to vet potential employees against these 21st century skills. So one thing I wanted to let the group know about is that although we do have everything open source and you can sign up as soon as you'd like to be able to download all the curriculum, we also provide training opportunities, and these trainings are designed to really go over 20 lessons. Is actually quite a lot, and it's quite a lot of content. So we go over all of the content in the lessons, how it relates to the modern workforce, and if you're part of the training, you also are able to practice facilitation with the lessons, do demos, and you are given certification at the end that you are authorized in teaching the 21st Century Skills curriculum. We incorporate a lot of information in the trainings about promoting work-based learning as well. And our next upcoming training is going to be April 18th and 19th in Sacramento. So if anyone is interested, they can send me an email afterward, and I can provide you the link to the registration page so you can read more about it. And outside of California, we actually are partnering with the National Association for Community College Entrepreneurship, and we are hosting trainings and webinars and doing presentations so we can really grow the awareness around the content that we have available and then the ways in which different organizations can incorporate it. And part of it is just brainstorming, what are you doing currently and how can this add as an enhancement? How could you incorporate this and be able to serve your students or your clients really effectively? So if anyone has any questions, please go ahead. You can take your audio, activate your audio, or you can also type any questions you have into the chat window. And then after that, I'm going to show a quick demo of one of our lessons so you have an idea of the type of content that I'm referring to in our presentations. So I'm just checking to see if there are any questions. Okay, so at this point it seems like they're not. I can open it up again at the end. But what we have right now is a demo lesson on social and diversity awareness. So for in our series,
Rajendra?
Social Diversity Awareness. Yes.
It's Christine. Hi, can you hear me okay?
Hi, Christine. I can, yes.
Hi, I just wanted to interrupt you because I see that there are some questions, and I was wondering, since now my audio is working, thank goodness, if you could maybe answer a couple of them.
Perfect, yes, because they're not showing up on my side, so that would be wonderful.
Okay,
Would you mind letting me know some of the questions?
I would love to. The first one is it possible to get a copy of the PowerPoint? If so, how?
Yes, no problem at all. I will actually defer to Christine to be able to send that out since she has the registration list.
Okay, and can you take your training to a community college campus?
Yes, we actually can do that, and one of the things I would suggest is that you contact, if you're interested, you contact your local DSNs in the area, the deputy sector navigators in your area. We've had certain deputy sector navigators who are using some of their funding to be able to bring the trainings onto the campuses in their regions. So that's one suggestion, but you can also email me directly and we can brainstorm some ideas about how effectively we could bring a training onto your campus.
Okay, and do you know, is there a fee for the training in April?
That's a great question, yes. So what we've tried to do is, with the same ethic of keeping everything as free as possible, the fee for the training is going to be $75, and that covers that you will be given an entire binder of all of the curriculum as well as a flash drive, and as part of our lessons we have a very core component of self-awareness, and so we actually have all of the training participants take a Keirsey assessment, very similar to Myers-Briggs. It's a modern version of a Myers-Briggs, and there's a fee associated with that. So the $75 basically covers your supplies, materials, and the assessment.
Okay, and someone asked to explain the digital badges in more detail.
Yes, thank you. I know it's always, you do that quickly, but yes, the digital badges are kind of a project onto themselves. So one of the components with digital badges, and for anyone who's interested, I would actually suggest you go ahead and Google Mozilla digital badging, and you'll be able to come up. It was the first way that I researched it, and it's great because they have a badging 101, and you can actually go through an example assessment and you can set up a backpack, and a backpack is the terminology that's used through Mozilla to basically house your badges. So what a badge is you go through a series of questions online, and those questions can be interactive based on the platform. For ours, going through Launchpath, they're going to have drag and drop functions. They'll have embedded video that a student will be giving an open-ended answer to, and so you can make it very interactive. But what happens is there will be a component of it being automated in its assessment, and then also the instructor would go in and have a rubric to be able to check that against the curriculum. And so if a student earns enough points within the assessment, think of it very similar to almost like the new version of like an SAT exam. If they earn enough points and they have earned the badge, in that badge, and it looks almost like the badges that you might be familiar with Girl Scouts or Boy Scouts that they would put on their little sashes. It is a visual representation, but when you click into it, it actually has verification information. It would show that the student had gone through the 21st Century Skills series, that they had that vetted by their instructor, and what it meant in a real workplace setting. And what we're going to be doing in the future is actually having a feedback loop, so employers could go in and they could say, for example, yes, Sally Smith earned this badge through going through the 21st Century Skills curriculum, and then she's been practicing and evidencing this skill within my workplace. If there are any additional questions about the badges, though, please go ahead and send those. I'm happy to answer, because I know badging it's a new frontier, and it's very interesting to see how it's being developed. But because we want to have a lot of integrity in the way that we're doing it, we're tying it with the curriculum. And then we're also working with numerous national groups, including the IMS Global, to be able to verify how you create the vetting information and also how you create the portability, so that an individual cannot steal someone else's badge. You can't just cut and paste badges and put them onto your website. That's not how it works. It has very specific information that's tied to that student.
Okay, in the interest of time, if anyone has any other questions, I can put them in touch with you.
Fantastic. Okay. So to go ahead and show you what a part of a demo lesson would be, this would be our Social Diversity Awareness Lesson 2. As I mentioned, we have 2 lessons per skill. And this lesson covers disabilities, diversity, and multi-generations in the workplace. So I've only taken one aspect of it to go over today, which is multi-generational workforces. And the reason I chose this is because we exist in a time that is unprecedented, where we have 4 different generations simultaneously in our workforce. And when you look at the core skills, our top 10 skills that we've discussed, you really have to incorporate so many of those in dealing with a multi-generational workforce. You have to be able to be aware of different communication styles within that range of ages. You have to be aware of how to collaborate across generations, and you really have to use a lot of analytical thinking. So one thing that you'll notice as you look at the cohort of 20 lessons is that they all kind of reference one another, and the skills really build. These are not skills that are done in isolation. Rather, the more that they become kind of in tandem, the more successful that a student can be in a workplace. So one thing that's really interesting right now is that because we have longer lifespans, we have a change in the way we're defining developmental definitions, and I found this fascinating when I first started doing research. And again, everything in the lessons is based on research, whether it is from established research journals or from contemporary research that's going on at other organizations to books that have come out, and we do let you know all of the research where it's coming from. So in this 0 to 20 is now considered the child life stage. So any of you that are working with traditional aged college students, coming in 18, 19, they're children. Just think of it as the developmental stages definitely are different now. 21 to 41 is considered young adult. 42 to 62 is considered midlife, 63 to 83 is elderhood, and 84 plus is bonus elderhood. So you really do have a very big difference in maturation at this point too, and to take that into account in how our workforce is being combined. So veterans and traditionalists, ranging from the years 1927 and 1945, currently make up about 7.6% of our workforce. And really, these are individuals who they might be working part-time, they might be in higher level consulting positions on the boards of other organizations. Then we have our baby boomers, 1946 to 63. They're 27.2% of the workforce, but what's really interesting with the baby boomers is there's a split there between those that have put off retirement and those that are actually going to be retiring soon. As I mentioned previously with the CalHR project, one of the things that they're looking at is how many of these baby boomers potentially are going to be retiring in the next few years, and how do we fill these open positions. And that's not just at a state level, but also in the private sector. Then we have Gen Xers, 1964 to 1979, and currently they make up about 33% of the workforce. But what's interesting about this group is they represent both leaders in organizations and prime age workers, and as we progress, we're really going to have a workforce that is geared primarily to and populated by Gen Xers and millennials. And then the millennials, 1980 to 1999, currently are 32% of the workforce, but they are also the growing population that is coming into the workforce. And what's interesting within the millennial group is you have a split, and you have millennials that are tech natives. So you have millennials that have never existed at a time before the internet. So it's interesting to think about how that really shapes amongst the generations their awareness of how work functions. And then we have Nexters. That term for their generation may change, but right now they're being referred to as Nexters, and they're from 2000 to the present, and they're currently developing statistics on how they are entering the workforce. So a couple of the trends that is really important to be aware of as you're going into this multi-generational workforce is that traditionalists, they were really shaped by a time of crisis. They were shaped by the Depression and World War II. And they're aware of scarcity. So there's a greater emphasis in traditionalists in the workforce on conservation and sacrificing for the greater good. And when I'm saying these generalizations, please recognize that obviously they are generalizations, but they're ones to be aware of, because when you start noticing patterns and you start noticing patterns represented in your workforce, you can preemptively figure out how you deal effectively with those patterns. And that's really the focus of this lesson, is to help students brainstorm how can they work most effectively when they're noticing certain patterns based on generations. Baby boomers, they were an interesting group because they were born at a time of rebuilding and then also very extreme social change within the United States. So they're quite a large and diverse group, and they both have helped shape and question our current institutions. The Gen Xers were really influenced by growing access to education. They were part of the group where there was a big movement toward college for all, and so many of them have that idea of how do they balance the family as well as the work goals. And the millennials are very tied in with technology, and they have been the big force behind social media growth. They also have been a big component of how marketing is now currently based in a more youth-based culture. So a couple of things to think about when you're working in a multi-generational setting is what different generations prefer. And with traditionalists, we're looking at face-to-face contact. Boomers, we're looking at recognition based on verified accomplishment. Gen Xers, they really want their core messaging to be clear and concise. And millennials, they value speed and they value access, easy access to information. So I see that we're getting close to the end of our time here. So what I wanted to show you is, once you as an instructor kind of gave this overview, starting on this slide is really when you would open it up to the students. You'd talk about some of the different trends that are happening in the generations, and then you would open up a facilitated talk of how can you accommodate these different styles. You can break your students up into different groups in your classroom and have them brainstorm against a particular scenario, and this really helps create the interactivity, but also helps them think about their own workplaces, their own internships, even the work that they're doing within a classroom setting, and how they might be dealing with at the community college level, especially these generations, and how they can work more effectively in that. So I'll go ahead and exit now because I know we're almost at time, and Christine, I can hand it back off to you. Are you there, Christine?
I'm sorry, I am here. I'm so sorry.
Okay.
Thank
Fantastic.
you
So
much. I'm going to take the screen back, and I know Rita wants to say a few words. Go ahead, Rita.
Okay, I just want to thank you, Rosinger. It's really nice to see the way you formatted these, and I would encourage anyone on the call just to go to your website and to be able to sign up and go take a look at the resources, and also to get the training, which we know is important. But I really appreciate you taking the time to share this with us. It's brought up a lot of things like the digital badging and many other issues that we all need to be very much aware of. So thank you for your time, and I'll turn it back to Christine, who's going to tell you about our next webinar.
Yes,
Next time.
Thank you. Yeah, and I just wanted to, what I normally say at the beginning, that the webinars are recorded, and that the resources on the Café and our webinars are brought to all of you through the SB 1070 funding from the California Community College Chancellor's Office. So I also want to remind you, next time, our webinar is Thursday, April 14th from 12 to 12:45, and it's going to be a very informative webinar on the CalJob site. So please tune in for that. And as Rajinder said, I will, if you all have any questions for her or any questions about materials, I will put you in touch with her. So feel free to email me if you have any questions. And thank you, and I apologize profusely about the audio difficulties we had at the beginning. It's going to be recorded. If for some reason, I also apologize if you can't hear it perfectly at the beginning of the webinar, but hopefully we got most of it in there. And I will sign off now.
Okay, thank you, Christine.
Thanks,
Thank you,
Rita.
Rosinger.
Bye-bye.
Okay.
Thank you.
Have a great day, everyone.
Bye.